You're welcome back. This is NewsFile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on NewsFile, we put Ghana first. And as I announced to you earlier, in this segment, we will be joined by another guest. I'll introduce her to you shortly. But this show is brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN, everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Consolidated Bank, we stand with you. Duraplus, where Duraplus goes, water flows. We lead, we build home for you. Star Assurance, your solid partner. And Rehoboth Properties. If you're looking for properties, that's the best place to look. Look nowhere else. I'm going to share your messages right about now. But before that, let me introduce our next guest. Mary Awolana Ada is Programs Manager, Ghana Integrity Initiative, GII. Thank you very much for making time to join us, Mary.
Thank you very much, Samson. And let me say good morning to your cherished viewers and listeners across Ghana. And also good morning to your panelists in studio.
Right. Thank you very much. Now, a couple of your messages on the first issue we have discussed. Ilyasu in Tamale says that the NDC is fast losing credibility as an incompetent opposition with the incessant and baseless claims against the EC at every stage. They just ended registration exercise, caught the EC as an outfit that's ready to organize credible December elections. Hashtag NewsFile. Akosia at Isempong, Isampong 80 says, this honestly is the best registration I have witnessed. I was registered in less than 5 minutes. Some people owe us apologies in this country for negative hype. But since they have no shame, we'll always find problems with every single thing. They have started it again. Hashtag NewsFile. Martin Ejay, MKA at Kweku Ejay, says that Kweku Bako should calm down. Why? Hashtag NewsFile. Okay, I hope I understand you. Eja Adam at Adam Eja says, despite the odds or negative vibes, some sentiments, campaigns, and crusades waged against the EC in its bid to embark upon its constitutionally obligated exercise, the registration exercise was not only successful and conducted within the time frame schedule. Hashtag NewsFile. Komla wants to talk about, wants to hear Kuku talk about Abasa on NewsFile and say, like them to, okay, you want to say eat humble pie, whatever. Aristocrat at Aristo 1968 says, if a whole minister has no confidence in the police and resorted to guns and thugs, then, okay, I don't think I can say the rest of what you want to. Please, let's predict good for the country going forward in the elections. We may caution and ask for things to be done right, but right. Okay, so a lot more, particularly NPP sympathizers and supporters, sending in messages of congratulations to the Electoral Commission for a good job done. That's what I would say to summarize the messages from Brian Boabing, Don Pino, and Nana Hesi Ojiri. That's the summary I can do. When the tables turn, let's see if you speak so well of the EC. Surprising how the parties act, eh? Right. Now, corruption. Will it be yet another big issue going into these elections? Well, the NDC has been organizing a series of press conferences. It calls it the Corruption Tracker press conferences. It has spoken about BOST. It has spoken about PDS, blames the government for a number of things that it hasn't done, and in fact suggests that the government is actually deep in corruption. And the NPP too has been saying a few other things. Now let's listen to President Akufo-Addo in 2016. We'll listen to him again in 2017, and then we'll hear Johnson Esiedun Ketia. We'll be right back.
The president claims he has tackled corruption with determination and fortitude. And the paradox of exposure is creating the impression that corruption is prevalent in his government. Curiously, the president cannot point to one example where the exposure of corruption has come from his government. Each scandal that has been exposed has been unearthed by the media, civil society, or the minority in parliament. The claim of the fight against corruption is further undermined by the fact that the independent governance institutions mandated to perform this function have been starved of funds. The Auditor General, for example, in 2013, complained bitterly about this. The last time I said this, government spokesmen were clearly unhappy. But I will continue to say it until I'm proven wrong with credible, verifiable information. Every time you see the Ridge Hospital, you should recall that according to the Crown agents, the contract for the project is inflated by $142 million. Again, every kilometer of road constructed by this government, every school block built under this government has cost more money than can be reasonably justified. It is clear from the actions taken on cases like judgment debts, the World Cup saga, JEDA, SADA, the DVLA saga, the Metro mass branding, etc., that the fight against corruption is a sham. I say again, the so-called fight against corruption is a sham. It's important that the fight against corruption be seen to be a fight against crime and not a struggle or a fight about political opponents. I would accept that the process of bringing people before the courts for acts of corruption are done for political purposes. They are done because you have evidence that people have breached the law and thereby caused damage to the public interest. To be able to do so, you need to be able to build strong, well-documented, well-researched allegations. There are a lot of allegations in our country about people in office. Many of them, when you probe, turn out not to be the case. If we had to go along with all the allegations, we'd have a plethora of cases, many of them the courts would not support. So the statement that I have made, all kinds of allegations have come to my notice and come to the notice of my government. There were thorough investigations going forward. And I will not accept prosecutions being brought just in order to satisfy the appetite of people that people should be prosecuted. They're going to be brought because they have been well documented, well researched, well documented. There's strong evidence of wrongdoing, which a court of law can reliably convict, use to convict.
Examples include the 2016 election relation corruption issues, mass branding scandal, Ghana Standards Authority, 1.2 million corruption scandal, Central Medical Stores arson saga, National Lotteries Authority bribery, and numerous adverse findings in annual audit reports of the public sector. So how can a 2017 report you are discussing as proper professional researchers. And you yourself having said that 88% of the data relates to 2017. And yet your commentary mentions nothing, not a single corruption scandal which occurred in 2017. I'm sure the Ghana Integrity Initiative would have to revisit their representation of Transparency International here in Ghana. If they are going to color the reports of Transparency International this way, then they are beginning to be a disservice to the country.
Right. So we talk about corruption, and here we are talking about the big corruption, the political corruption. I know often when we mention it, once one group is in government, they want you to talk about all the petty corruption. When they are in opposition, they want you to not focus on that, talk about the big corruption. The corruption that sees what can build a hospital. Hospitals literally built in people's pockets. That's what we are talking about. And it is an Africa-wide issue. And in developing countries, if you read the UND reports, it is very, very terrible, including illicit financial dealings. As much as 1.2 billion United States dollars. That's 991.2 billion United States dollars is the total of illicit financial outflows from developing countries in 2012, according to the Global Financial Integrity 2014. This is over 10 times the official development assistance, over 10 times the official development assistance received by these countries, the developing countries. Some $6.6 trillion left these developing countries illicitly between 2003 and 2012. Illicit flows increased by 9.4% each year in that period, faster than growth of those economies. Check that. 2.7% of global GDP is available for laundering, according to the United Nations organization that looks at this corruption matter. As you have heard over the period, our development partners have been talking about as much as 3 billion United States dollars that is unaccounted for in this country each year. So the money that comes to us by way of aid and everything, where does it go if we cannot account for that much? If you have heard Professor Stephen Adair render it in a certain way, you will be shocked what goes on. So let's start with the CDD. You did the Afro Barometer survey, and we can start from that point for 2019. And in the Afro Barometer, you identified that majority of Ghanaians, the citizens, say that corruption is somewhat or a lot worse, and it ranks 8th and not a priority of the problems of Ghanaians. 6 in 10, that is 61% of Ghanaians, will not report corruption for fear of some form of retaliation. So how do you analyze the regime now as against the previous regime?
Thank you, Samson. So first of all, let me make some preliminary comments, observations, I think. Corruption in Ghana is still prevalent and is very pervasive. Whether anecdotally, individual experiences, petty corruption, grand corruption, it is pervasive. Second point is that people are beginning to accept it as a way of life. Actually, people get fatigued by hearing about corruption because they feel helpless in tackling it. And that is what is, for me, the most dangerous thing, because it then is an acceptance of a certain type of society where basically truth, honesty, integrity are actually a rare commodity. And if you are honest, truthful, and a person of integrity, you are actually at risk. Because it's not that people are going to ignore you for your integrity. They feel that you are not playing the game, and therefore you are a danger to those who want to be dishonest and steal, you and my money. And that is a very dangerous, because then it begins to affect the moral fabric of our society. And that is why, for me, it is not really an NPP, an NDC issue. We still have to hold the regime in power responsible for what it says it will do about corruption. I'll come to that. But the trend data over a decade and more tells us that we have failed woefully in our effort to fight corruption. And I'll show you just, through the various data that I have here to make that case. If I take, for example, the Afrobarometer, you just mentioned the Afrobarometer on levels of corruption, for instance. So we did the recent survey in 2019. And you see a very interesting trend in that. I just want to show, all right. Okay. Yeah. If you look at 2014, right? 2014, where we were really at one of the highest peaks of corruption that we have seen, in terms of people saying that corruption has increased somewhat or a lot. 83% of those surveyed said that corruption had increased. Then 2017, there's a new government. You heard the president, the agenda of the NPP. The perception reduced to 39%. Then 2019, it shoots up to 53%. All right. Then if you then look at the evaluations of government performance, again over time, you begin to see a certain trend. So, and this goes as way back to 1999 when the Afrobarometer actually started.
Which page are you on?
So this will be, I don't think it's numbered, so it'll be very difficult, but it will be one of the last slides. So if you take government performance in fighting corruption, so normally the question is asked, how well or badly would you say the current government is handling the following matters, or you haven't heard enough to say? So those who say fairly badly or very badly, those are the figures I'm looking at, and those who say fairly well or very well. So if you go from 1999, so 1999, those who say fairly badly or very badly, 57%. Then you get a new government in 2001, the Kufuor government, it shoots down to 27%.
Zero tolerance for corruption. That's the mantra.
A lot of
so the people had faith.
A lot of optimism.
So they seem to have faith at the start of the administration.
Very much so.
Okay.
Then 2005, it goes to 38%. 2008, it goes to 40%. Right. Then you have 2012, it goes to 56%. Now in 2012, it was basically a continuation of the same government, right? So continue. So 56, then it goes to 74% in 2014. Then 2017 comes down to 34%, And then 2019, it goes to 53%. So maybe you say the Ghanaian is an ultimate optimist, that, you know, there is still an expectation that maybe the next government is really going to deal with it, with the challenge. And so there's always a benefit of doubt that is given to that government. But how long are we going to play this game? Because at some point, whatever it is, the optimism might disappear. So, but that is the record. If you go to the CPI,
right,
which is another source that you can look at in terms of perception, from 2002, I'm using as a 2012.
And the CPI is a corruption perception index,
which
Transparency International, particularly with its partners, GII here in Ghana, gets to give us the result. But it is done, it's a global activity that they do. And there are clear, measurable items that they use to do it.
Sure.
And we have relied on this for over the years.
So if you take the CPI from 2012, we scored 45. So it's 100 over 100. Right? We score 45.
100 is a clean score.
If the clean, the highest you can. So the higher you score, the more cleaner you are.
The better you are doing with corruption.
2013, we scored 46. 2014, we scored 48.
We did a lot better.
We did 2 points better. 2015, we came down to 47. 2016, we got down again to 43. 2017, 40. And then 2018, 41. And 2019, 41. What the story that tells us is that we have performed below average for the last, whatever years you can imagine, between regimes. And actually, you can go all the way back to when the records of the CPI started. We have never performed 50% or above. And if you compare us to some of the good performers in Africa, the Seychelles, the Botswanas, and the Cabo Verde, even Cabo Verde is more recent experience, but it does follow their development trajectory as well, in terms of their performance on these indices. So there's a story to say about our stagnation in really dealing with corruption issues. And the problem we have is really about inputs, outputs, and outcomes. So if you take all of the parties and their manifestos about corruption, there is a lot that they say they want to do. But when at the end you begin to measure whether or not what they said they want to do have contributed to reducing corruption, then you have a problem.
Okay.
So they can tell you that I said I'll pass this law, I'll pass that law. So
we'll get into some specific, but there was this issue you raised with me and myself and Kweku, and it tickled my this thing. Your key findings, as in the Afrobarometer report, and this has been done for 20 years now, and it's a reliable instrument that we use within the region, and CDD Ghana is the representative here in Ghana. Your key findings was that public officials, the police, judges, magistrates, members of parliament, civil servants, tax officials are most widely perceived as corrupt. And you were making a commentary about this, which doesn't give much hope.
And actually, because it basically probably points to the real crux of the problem. And this is over time again, so this is not just the 2019 figure.
Right.
But if you take all of the institutions that really are set to fight corruption, the police, judges, magistrates, members of parliament, civil servants, tax officials, the president and officials in his office, MMDCs, traditional leaders, assembly members, and then you have other like electoral commission and so on. All in the majority, and I'm talking some of them in the 80s, are perceived to be corrupt by the populace. So how on earth are we going to be able to fight corruption when the people that are set in place to fight the corruption are all perceived to be corrupt?
Mary, let me start with you from your own work, as in the work that the Transparency International does and you collaborate with them. Now, Dr. Kojo refers to the CPI and looks at since 2012 to 2019 and makes the comment that although corruption is prevalent, it is pervasive, we have done below average on the CPI. We may have done below average as a country, but there's an interesting permutation, isn't there? 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016 can be separated as periods when we did far better than 2017, 2018, and 2019. Whilst in 2012, we did 45. Then the next year, we did 46. We went up by 1 point, very encouraging. 2014, we went up by as much as 3 points. Then 2015, we did 47%. 2016, 43. Then 2017, we do 40. The rest of the years, we do only 41. That tells a story situated within the regimes, isn't it? Is it not as clear as daylight? Your microphone, please unmute your microphone.
Great. So let me first of all indicate that this question about comparisons, it's not one we should be encouraging. But since you want us to talk about it, what I would want to say is that per the Constitution, it says in Article 35(8) that the state, not a particular government, shall put in place measures to eradicate corruption or corrupt practices and the abuse of power. And so it's not for a particular government, whether it be it NDC or NPP. So let me put that in context. Again, we say that governments are continuum. And so definitely we have a government in place from either 2000 to 2004, it continues. For us as a people, what we want to see is that we are fighting corruption. And clearly from what Kojo says, we have not done very well when you situate this in the data. And the data is the CPI from 1999 till date. And when it became comparable, and Kojo mentions from 2012, because it is important to indicate that the methodology of the CPI was recalculated to make it comparable across the years. And so that's why we made the comparisons from 2012. So when it became comparable, you realize that the highest score thus far is the score of 2014, which was 48. However, we do not want to meddle in the fact that whether this government has done well or not, because according to the CPI, you must score 50 and above to tout yourself as doing well as a country. Again, the CPI does not measure governments because it does not know which party or who is in government at a particular time. And so this is very independent views from business people, from experts in country who have lived the experiences. And you would realize that there are certain benchmarks by which the scores are measured. And as we speak to the issues, we would speak to that. However, I do not want to meddle in the fact that whether this is that or this is that. Let's leave that for the people of Ghana to judge. And so the clear benchmarks, as Kojo has also mentioned, for us is, have we as a state or as a country put in place the measures or the legal frameworks that are required to fight corruption? Therein, I would say yes, and for both governments, they have done so. Have we in any way put in place the necessary institutions strengthen them enough and ensure that they are effective to fight corruption? Again, that is for the people of Ghana to determine. And then, are we making sure that corrupt behavior is unattractive? Let me quickly bring in the NACAP.
Before you go to NACAP, when
Yes,
you
please.
talk about whether or not the laws are in place to fight corruption, you are able to give an emphatic answer, yes. Then when it gets to whether the institutions are being empowered and strengthened, you leave that to us. We have given you, the CSOs, that job to stand in that gap for us. So you speak for us.
Okay, great. I can say for a fact that some of the things that have happened, and this is not for one government, across the various parties' dispensations, you would realize that one of the clarion calls from civil society has been the fact that the institutions of states who are mandated to fight corruption are not given the needed resources to ensure that they fight corruption and fight it very well. We can mention cases in point of Shraj, for instance, which is located in just 100 districts across Ghana. And today we have over 260-something districts in this country. And so if we are fighting corruption, and Shraj is the main body that is mandated to fight corruption per our constitution, and this particular institution is not located everywhere, then we have issues. We again talk about not just their office locations, but the financial resources to ensure that they implement the various interventions and policies that are supposed to help this country to reduce corruption. And it's not just the Shraj. We have others like the Yoko, the audit service, and the police. And so it's not just about Shraj, but Shraj is the main body that is supposed to be fighting corruption. And you are aware that this institution is not that capacitated to do an effective job. It also has a threefold mandate, which even makes their case worse. If they were focusing on just anti-corruption, perhaps they would be doing more. But they have a human rights and also admin justice mandate. And so you realize that in 100 districts, out of 200 and something, it is not possible to see the main anti-corruption institution doing its work. And judging by the various budgetary allocations from all governments, you would realize that these institutions are stifled for funds. They do not have the needed amount within which they can operate within the financial years and also deliver on their mandate. And so for us, those are issues we have advocated for, and we believe that those are not, we can talk to them as well. And then when it comes to the third issue of sanctioning, when I mentioned the NACAP, you said I should hold on to that. Then you realize that...
Sorry, Mary, the question of resources. I know that you don't want me to do the comparison because we haven't done a 50 mark in the CPI, but still the data is there for anybody to see. So I can make that comparison. Sure. That it becomes obvious that within a certain regime, at least in the last two regimes, the NDC has performed far better in the CPI than the NPP has done. The NDC at least has done 48%, 47%. The NPP is doing 40, 41, 41. Now, when it comes to resourcing, and this is the balance, the NPP credits itself with having resourced these anti-graft agencies far better than any government has done, perhaps in the history of this country. So, as far from where you sit, is that not correct? The NPP says, for example, that the heads of the audit service, Shraj, and other anti-corruption agencies can attest that they have provided significantly more resources in the last 2 years or so than used to be the case. The Auditor General they have continuously referred to, has disclosed that the service is getting threefold the resources it used to get. You know, so isn't that too, when it comes to that too, does the NPP not do better than the NDC, and yet the corruption perception, NDC does better than the NPP?
Great. So you would realize that definitely for each of the things, we want a comprehensive analysis. And let me come again with the data from where the CPI is scored, the data sources. If you look at the sources, it talks about issues of transparency and accountability, issues of adequate resourcing of anti-corruption institutions, talks about issues around right to information, and if civil society is giving the needed information to work. It also references the independent audit institutions and if government is providing them the needed resources. So across regimes, you would realize that some regimes have done some better than others would have done in the various indicators from the data sources. And as you have indicated, the Auditor General is on record to have cited that his resources or his requests for budgets were given to him as a totality and no reductions were made. So that is granted. In other dispensations, they would have done other things, including the passage of laws. And if you realize in the recent past, we have had the RTI being passed, which is a critical component of the various sources that the CPI draws data from. And that is 7 out of 9. Does the regime have these available? Then again, let me mention that the CPI picks data within a certain period. And so for the 12 to 24 months of data, anything could happen. And we are saying that we do not want to say that this person has done very well, because within the period, if you are doing that cross analysis, you would realize that data perhaps from the African Development Bank, which looks at issues around corruption and institutional reforms, would be perhaps 2016, 2017, or cutting across 2012 and 2013. So you would say that, and so people would say, why are we not trying to do this analysis based on who is doing better than who? We are saying that for a fact, no one is doing better for us because we haven't crossed that mark. We are saying everybody has done their own. And so if you realize, even with sanctioning, you realize that across the regimes, everybody is doing their part when it comes to the fight against corruption. However, is what they are doing what we want to see being done? No. We want to see more, because the allegations of corruption that are coming in, day out, we want to see more attention being paid to them than the lip service, which continues to be what we observe each and every day across this country when we wake up from sleep.
All right, so I'll return to you. We'll look at a bit of the detail and, for example, the recommendations that the GII gives for improving the situation. Yes, Kokuso, like she mentions, we passed the Special Prosecutors Law. Everybody was excited. This is such a major boost to the fight against corruption. You know now that there is a section of the society that feels, well, did we go or did we come? It hasn't added anything really. We passed the RTI, a big anti-corruption, document. Yet we have government institutions, public services that are denying people basic information they are requesting. The passage of the RTI remains passage of the RTI. Nothing more substantially done to bring it into effect, even though it's the only law that has a history of being passed and having a clause that says it must take 1 year before it can be implemented. And we still are grappling with the implementation. So how do you assess the regime comparatively?
Well, you see, the incumbent regime, during which period this corruption perception index are produced and the verdicts that come with them, must have the courage to accept the challenge. These are credible institutions that come out with very credible indicators of what you are doing relative to the fight against corruption. I've been a student of this research findings since it began. And I know how we have dealt with it within the political framework, where we try to score points, either in the name of this party or this government as against the other one. That has, in a way, complicated the need to bring clarity to bear on it.
One is good, they are good to issue statements to praise themselves.
Exactly, and we can have thousands of examples here. You know, there were times even the Kufuor administration even had problems with the CDD. I'm sure you remember over some of those things, you know, because Mr. Kufuor's view was that it's just perception. It means nothing. You know, we've had the same thing subsequently. But the key point is for the administration to accept the challenge that things are not going the right way, and that whatever you are doing is insufficient in curing this corruption challenge. That is the first thing. And then we come to some practical matters. And it's good you are stated here, the RTI Act. What's happening? I know the commission, they're supposed to set up some commission. Yes. I know there are efforts in that direction because there's a lady friend of mine who is a seasoned journalist who apparently has been invited to be part of that process. But it's not visible. It's not transparent. Nothing is happening.
It's not set up yet.
Yes.
It shouldn't take 1 year after the law's implementation has been delayed by one other year.
Thank you.
To set it up.
I agree.
There are issues with it. But anyway,
I don't know all those issues, but could you, if you know, you provide. But the point really is that the inertia is unacceptable. Yeah. That's the bottom line. It's delayed. We don't see anything. We don't hear anything. So then you are killing the spirit of the RTI Act.
People apply for information and they still are forced to go to court for the court to force. Yeah.
Yes,
that is what is the most disappointing.
Like it happened to the Electoral Commission.
Yes, so to be honest, it's a minus there. It doesn't matter the good intentions. It doesn't matter the good efforts that may be underway. We haven't seen the results relative to that particular one. So it's a minus. And government must be courageous to accept that. If you accept that deficit, it helps in you making an effort to cure the mischief. Same with the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Some of us who were ardent advocates of that particular legislative, entity, putting it in terms of the law, to be honest, where is the visibility, where is the transparency, where is the product in terms of outcome? Okay, a simple case, well, I shouldn't say a simple case, I may be undervaluing it, but the Galamsey investigation by Tiger Eye.
Over how many months?
Yes, it's been there. At one stage, there was even a running battle between the CID and the Office of the Special Prosecutor. And I was on the side of the Office of the Special Prosecutor, because that's where the complaint had been lodged. Yeah. What is the status of that investigation? We don't hear anything. We don't see anything. That is a minus. See, the issue of the investigations.
The PPA,
well, that's a Shraj, but we don't hear anything.
And one not there,
There's one at Shraj, and there's one before the Special Prosecutor.
See, that is the key point. Government should set up that allegations are made, investigations are made, you direct the things to appropriate institutions. But if nobody is saying anything, and if there is nothing happening, it's as if you're doing nothing at all. And you ought to take the blame for that situation. It doesn't matter. You have to. See, we are talking about the declaration of assets and liabilities regime. How long has it been in Parliament? It started with civil society groups, somewhere 2005. All sorts of things were put together. It's in Parliament. Nobody knows what is happening. It takes so long, so it loses its value. On paper, it's so beautiful, so nice.
The thing is that when one parliament dies, the process completely
again. They
ends.
have that.
They have that all over again.
It's almost a culture.
You have to go for those meetings and get per diems and all of that all over again at the expense of the taxpayer.
Yes, and you see, there are also instances of issues that were subject to investigations. You have the Australian visa thing. I just don't understand the system sometimes. People have been asking, CID, you finish your investigations. What is the outcome?
I thought the president had told us the outcome.
What did he say?
About, particularly relative to
one person. To one person. Significant though, because he was a deputy minister who was suspended. But what is making this report unpublishable? Transparency, light. There's a copy of the report. And the actions the police are the intent taken, that also has kept a bit long, because they're now seeking mutual legal assistance from the Australian government. And all the letters are here. People's reputations are still at stake. There are people who don't believe anything that has been said relative to the deputy minister.
That's right.
How do you cure that? Make this report transparent. Get the things you are asking from Australia. Have you received them? Give us status reports. That's what you do. But it's still in the public space. BNI set up an investigations. Ministry of Energy did, and bots itself. Their reports are available. Make them public. Make those reports public. Then if there are findings and recommendations, seek to implement them. Otherwise, look, the perception will remain a reality. Indeed, it's a reality virtually. Because nobody is seeing action. PDS, all the things surrounding it. It wasn't a tidy process, in my candid opinion. At the end of the day, the Ghanaian government and the US government even clashed.
Right.
And that for me was good, that we took a stand. It doesn't mean we're totally blameless in terms of the processes. People are asking questions, especially relative to the revenue aspect. Make it public.
Then there were allegations of fraud.
Yes, and indeed there was fraud.
Beyond allegations, those have been confirmed.
Yes,
by our own side of the team.
This is the Ghanaian government report.
Right.
This report was what was given to the FTI, the US private. Yes, this report was given to MIDA, MCC, and they gave it to the FTI because the Al-Qud people refused to hand over documents to FTI.
Right.
They made them read, but did not give them the documents. But this is the Ghana government report, which was dated, I think, 9th August, long before the FTI report came out. Why don't you publish it? And there are standing issues, especially the revenue side.
That's right.
Deal with it. I remember the finance minister indicating that the case, the fraud aspect and other things have been handed over to the CIA. What is the status?
So the NDC has been suggesting that whilst PDS took over the electricity management, they had collected in excess of 1.5 billion from consumers. They want an accounting for this by 1st of March 2019. 1st of March 2019 to October 2019. They want to have an accountability. Let's have a publication. How much did they collect in fact? And so on and so forth.
And in principle, I'm with them on that score.
Right.
You cannot be against it. It's a legitimate line of inquiry. But it is the responsibility of the incumbent administration to provide the answers. Okay? Provide the answers.
And this is a transaction that has led to Ghanaians losing the opportunity of 190 million US dollars.
Yes.
This was money that was supposed to improve our systems. But because we sort of misconducted ourselves somewhat, we have lost that money. They want somebody to answer for it.
Yes, and it's legit. Yeah. Okay, there are other issues that came up, yes, were dealt with. For instance, you have the $2.5 billion so-called Ken bond.
Yes.
We all know it was properly dealt with as well as the court, an aspect of it. Yeah. Okay, the Bogachi Ajako bribery allegation was dealt with by Parliament. Cash for seat was dealt. Yes, these are pluses. But there are minuses. And some of those minuses, perhaps if you were transparent and open about them, people's criticism might be minimized. So there is a challenge. It's not peculiar to this administration, but it is this administration that is in office now.
Right.
And the issues, some of which we are discussing, are current. Yeah. So it is incumbent on them. And this is very, I'm saying this on basis of conviction and conscience. To be honest with you, I don't think the fight has been that much effective. That's my candid opinion.
Very interesting there. So we'll take a quick break. When we return, we'll look at just some other, aspects, but focus on the recommendations for solutions so that we avoid this ritual of all the time talking about the corruption and it's never, it doesn't seem to
just
ever go away.
Lamenting.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is NewsFile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on NewsFile we put Ghana first. The show is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN everywhere you go. Shasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Consolidated Bank, we stand with you. Durafloss, where Durafloss goes, water flows. Waylead, we build you home. Star Assurance, your solid partner, and Rehoboth Properties. So, could you now? I was hoping we could do a bit before we get to the recommendations and solutions that we should be talking about, because my understanding is that these recommendations and solutions we find in your Afrobarometer, in the CPI report, they are known, except that they are never really effectively implemented. Each year, the Auditor General's report, we know, is littered with acts of embezzlement, fraud, thefts. So what should be done? What should be done?
So there are maybe about 3 or 4 things that I think has to be dealt with. It starts with the campaign financing problem. The recent work we did, Corruption Watch, on the NPP primaries, tells you we have a huge problem with money in politics. It already sets the stage for corrupting the system before we even, a government is formed, because it's a basic, this is a democratic accountability system. The politician ultimately is the one that is going to supervise the process. Now, if that person is coming with all kinds of baggage. So primaries, you are paying huge amounts of money to get elected. So you have to find money to pay. You haven't even gone to do the parliamentary elections. And again, they are going to do vote buying and so on. Then when you come out, you are supposed to go into government and oversee the public's money. All the people you owe for giving you all those things, you already compromised. If we don't fix it, and fixing it even within the parties, to be able to get a party that can coherently deliver an agenda, if they don't fix it within the parties, very soon the parties will be captured by people who just have money. And all, now you got, I mean, every year on year, you see the people who are bidding for, if you have money, you can basically, it's an investment, like you decide that you sponsor a couple of people so that that is the problem the parties are facing. When you have that situation, there is no way in government you can come and fight corruption.
So the EC has a role there to play.
Exactly.
Do we have any record of the EC playing this particular role in section 21 of the Political Parties Act 2000? That section mandates the parties to file their returns and accounts indicating state of the accounts, sources of funds, paid membership dues, audited accounts, with the Electoral Commission within 6 months from the 31st of December of each year. Do we have a record that they are complying clearly? What's going on?
You remember that I think Citizen Movement or Citizen Ghana Movement
went to court.
We went to court.
They got a judgment.
They got a judgment,
Right.
but even the data that we got was so inadequate that you can't really do much with it. But that is even a limited role, because you know that the money actually flows to the candidates and not the party as such. You understand?
So at least let's start with this.
No, I think we have to go because it's a connected system. You can't. It's not enough that we focus. Even the parties have to do their returns, but it is important how we hold the candidates. Because that is where, and as I'm saying, even it starts from the primaries, right from the primaries. And the primaries, the other problem is that we don't have any laws that actually deal with vote buying and other things in the primaries. If the parties don't put it in their constitution.
If a party is supposed to render accounts, tell the state of its accounts, tell the sources of the funds, tell membership dues that are paid, tell contributions and donations, cash and kind, that it has received for a period, its assets, and audited accounts for a particular year. If this was done, we'll be solving the problem somewhat.
I think it's way bigger than that. Even if the parties give you all of that, the chunk of the problem is with the individuals. Because what will come to the parties is what they report. But often, sometimes even just cash. Nobody's going to go and pay anything to a party office and so on. So even the parties having rules on vote buying in their constitution, they don't have it. Even though they are supposed to mimic what happens at the national level, they don't have it. That is a major...
You think this is not important, and yet the lawmaker, and by the work that Justice VCRAC Law Commission did, the penalty is a fine from any amount to a maximum 10 million penalty unit. That's 120 million Ghana cedis, or 2 years in jail.
Something. What I'm saying is that, yes, if we are getting the parties filing returns, that will be helpful. But the problem is much bigger than that. So whatever reforms we need there has to go beyond what is currently provided. The other thing is what has happened within government itself. All the institutions of state we have put in place to check abuses are underperforming or malfunctioning. Because the whole public financial management system, from the independent governance institutions, internal audit, this and all of those things, because every time you see what you see in the Auditor General's account, it shows you that internal systems are not working. And one of the biggest problems is the procurement.
Internal systems are not working, yet the Auditor General on leave got us over 5 billion Ghana cedis.
Sure, but that is all after the fact.
No, he stopped it.
Yeah.
That money...
you're talking about that audit
money that he would have taken from the state.
2016.
He stopped it. Yeah.
Sure. And a lot of special audits that he has done also have stopped some. But a lot of his job is after the fact. There are many checks within the public financial system that could stop the bleeding that we are seeing.
All right.
But it has put so much pressure on the vertical. So the verdict about corruption then comes to the voting, civil society, and media. Nana Akufo-Addo was, for example, President Akufo-Addo was talking about that the cases that had come during Mahama's time all came from exposés. It is the same thing we have seen. under this regime.
Right.
It's still coming from exposés. So it means our yokos, all of these groups that are there that are supposed to check are not doing their job. So we have to look at that. And the last thing for me is public ethics.
Okay.
We have not regulated public ethics so that we forget that every case, you take the anatomy of every case, corruption case, it starts with conflict of interest or some nepotism issue or any of those gift giving that has not been regulated. So this conduct of public officers bill, which would actually outline, and not just in the paper, but it will be enforced.
Let me go to Mary, but you're also talking about laws. And you are the same people who say Ghana has all the beautiful laws, the best of the laws to catch a thief. Thieves in public office, and yet we are asking for more laws and more laws. Now, Mary, you did recommend a number of things to be done, that governments must take a critical look at elements that promote public sector corruption, including patronage, clientelism, nepotism, and suspiciously close ties between politics and business. Government should enforce sanctions against vote buying, abuse of incumbency. Well, he's spoken about some of them. Political parties must demonstrate a high sense of integrity, transparency. Electoral Commission should enforce, I just referred to that law, and so on. Is it really the case that this is not what is being done? That's why we are where we are. And how can we get this done?
Thank you very much, Samson. One of the things that I agree with Kojo on all he said, and also particularly with Kwekubaku when he mentions that the issue of transparency is not adequately addressed when it comes to some of the scandals that have come up, which have been unveiled by individual efforts and through investigative journalists. And so, going to your question specifically, our recommendations are based on facts, and the recommendations we make are supposed to assist the states and governments who are in power at the time to ensure that they put in these recommendations into policy and also action to ensure that we make some gains when it comes to the CPI in subsequent years. For instance, let me take a case in point which came up, which you are very much aware of, the contracts for sale. One of the indices that I mentioned earlier is very heavy on what happens in the licensing, in the procurement, and in the sanctioning regimes when it comes to public sector corruption. And so they specifically would want to see how the procurement process is followed. Are we doing competitive tendering? Are we ensuring that fairness prevails? And are we as a country ensuring that those who try to flout the laws are sanctioned appropriately? And remember, those who are informing this service are people who have dealt with our institutions, are people who are working in country who we refer to as experts. And so if we make a recommendation that public procurement should be stringent, we should have fairness, then we are doing that based on fact. We also make a recommendation, as you mentioned, patronage. Our government's full of nepotistic elements. Then this is part of one of the indices that is made for the calculation of the CPI. And these indicators are mentioned. And so if the country is seen to be engaging in certain tendencies, and if the perception out there is that government at a particular time is engaging in these tendencies, then it is not surprising that you would see this emanating in the findings, and which makes us reduce our score. And as I mentioned, you would realize that for those scores, they come down so drastically. We've never made it more than 30 or 33
That's
on
very
those
sad
elements,
indeed.
meaning that we have an issue.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much for your time. And this is where we draw the curtains on today's edition of NewsFile. My guests have been Abdul Malik Kubako, Editor-in-Chief of the New Crusading Guide, and our regular panelist. Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante is Director, Advocacy and Policy Engagement at the CDD. Mary Awalana Ada is the Programs Manager, Ghana Integrity Initiative. And earlier, we had Dr. Emmanuel DeGraff Johnson, who's Department of Statistics and Actuarial Science, KNUST. I'm Samson Ladi Anyanini. As always, my outfit is by Latida. Have a good afternoon.